All right, and we are on. For the record, I'm Ashley Jepson. I'm the Plant Health and Compliance Division Administrator for the Nevada Department of Agriculture. And I want to extend a huge thank you. There's a great list of participants here, which is really refreshing. Some of our other public workshops haven't had this amount, so it's really great to see. And I thank you for taking the time because we know your time is precious and everybody's so busy. So thank you. We are here to discuss proposed changes to Nevada Administrative Code 552. This has not been routed to the Legislative Council Bureau at this point in time. We want to get the public feedback, and we already have extensively through our small business impact survey. So thank you to those that participated in that as well. It is 10:02 on February 16th of 2022, and we have started our workshop. Make sure I'm not missing anything else for our initial announcements here. Okay, a little housekeeping. I'm going to put up a PowerPoint slide here that goes over a little bit of the logistics on where we're at. And of course, there will be opportunity for public comment. So bear with me for just a moment as I get this up. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you guys can see that power. Okay, thanks, Amber. Okay. Okay, great. So I want to, before we get too far into it, this is going to go a little bit into the housekeeping on what we're discussing and a little bit of the background on it. I have received some public comment already in writing, so a thank you to folks that have sent that. I do want to apologize because I actually caught this morning, I was a little confused by a couple of the public comments because they were on things that we actually struck from the proposed regulation. So I just wanted to let folks know that the neighbor notifications piece was struck. The only thing that we're proposing is having some form of signage or notification of those hives. So we'll show you what that proposed language is, and we'll go into public comment to hear from you and get suggestions too, because we definitely want to hear from you on that. So going into it here, as I mentioned, this is for Nevada Administrative Code 552, and it's a workshop, so it's early on in the stages. So far, the draft that we're going to present to you and that you've seen online, and it was part of the attachment to notice if you received this via email, that's been drafted by the department based on our authority and NRS. So it has not gone to the Legislative Council Bureau, and why we've done that is we figured there was going to be a lot of feedback and some changes to it before, so we were trying to be cognizant of Legislative Council Bureau's time since we knew it was going to be a working document. And your feedback certainly has been taken and will continue to be. We have done a small business impact survey. That's actually kind of the first step that we got a lot of information on the proposed changes. So in that initial survey, we had the neighbor notifications and certainly received a lot of feedback on that. And that piece has since been stricken from the proposed regulation. So you will see on our website where you got the link, and I'll make sure it's put in the chat. Megan, if you're able to link that in the chat, that would be fantastic. It does have our summary of the survey for results that we got from industry, and also our overall summary of that small business assessment. So that part has to be completed before we get a workshop, and if you would like to go through that, it is on our website and will be in the chat. So now we're at that next phase of public workshop. So this is really where we're reviewing the changes as they stand now, answering questions and accepting public comment on how this could affect industry or suggestions on how to tweak the language. Any of those things are particularly helpful. Once we feel we've gotten to be in a good place, it's possible we might, in the interim, hold another workshop, just depending on how this goes. But if we feel we're in a good place, then we will route it to the Legislative Council Bureau for drafting And once we have that draft, we would proceed with a hearing for intent to adopt where there's public comment and this process continues. If that were to proceed, it would move to the legislative committee, and they ultimately review and approve and allow for adoption. So just kind of some logistics on where we're at in that stream, and what some of the future steps will be. Okay, some housekeeping. As we do have public participation, this is a little bit of kind of a tutorial of how to raise your hand. Some of you have cameras on, so if I see your hand raised, I'll certainly pick on you that I can see in the camera, but otherwise you have that icon here. If you go underneath your name, you have the option to lower and raise your hand. So we'll go off of that as people are able to comment during public participation. So hover over your name, click on that raise hand feature. Another thing too, I know sometimes technology gets in the way or you may not want to speak in front of the group. We absolutely welcome, oh, sorry, I need to change that. I used another template. I need to change the email address. Megan, would you mind putting in the chat my email? Sorry. Because animal industry will certainly get it to me, but probably aren't the ones who want to receive it. So my apologies for that. But written comment can absolutely be sent to me. I've already received some so far, and it goes as part of the record. Those pieces will be part of the meeting minutes as this workshop concludes, and is certainly welcome and very, very helpful. Sorry, Megan, I'm overworking you already. Okay, just a little bit more housekeeping here. This is how we will handle the agenda. We'll have public comment, and then we'll do an overview of the proposed regulation followed by public comment, and then we will adjourn. When you do provide public comment, please make sure to state your name and affiliation for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If somebody has made a comment of similar nature, try to minimize the duplication. You're welcome to reiterate some of that in written comment too, but we just want to be mindful of everybody's time. If it's a similar nature that's already been spoken, please just keep that in mind. Any unused time that you have in your 3 minutes you cannot allocate to another speaker. So just for comments on that. And if I miss anything in the chat to my team, if you'll make sure that I capture that as well. And I also just want to point out, so myself, Ashley Jepson, Amber Smyer, Jeff Knight, and Megan Brown are all Nevada Department of Agriculture employees. You've probably worked with all of us in some capacity, but I apologize for not mentioning that before. And here is our actual proposed changes. So again, I so apologize for the error in what you guys received. The background information had some of the previous justification when we had the neighbor notifications. So I'm sure that certainly contributed to the confusion in some of the public comments that we've already received in writing. So I do apologize for the confusion, but we have struck that piece of neighbor notifications. At this point in time, we're trying to overcome the challenge of getting complaints or coming across a hive that's been abandoned, mismanaged, diseased, and how to handle that. It's not always the actual property owner that has that hive. So we're trying to figure out how we can get in contact with those people. And really, we're trying to respond as they come up. So if we get a call and a complaint, we go out and we actually know who to follow up with in terms of the hive management. So that's what we're trying to address. Again, we're open to discussion on what that could be. And at this point, we have just a sign that could be there. So we know who to get in contact with. That's what we're trying to, so more, if we find something or if we get a complaint, then we can at least follow it through and meet what we've been legislative commissioned to do in NRS 552 to handle these potential disease issues and so forth. So with that, I did see something pop up in chat. Give me just a moment here to see what we had there.
taken care of the questions in the chat, Ashley, so
Okay.
unless somebody sent one directly to you.
Nope, I just saw the one from Jeff and I was having trouble getting back to it. Perfect.
Hey, Ashley,
Yeah.
if I could, also this identification process is there for pollinator protection so that anybody doing pesticide applications in and around these areas can notify the beekeeper or get a hold of the beekeeper to help protect their colonies. And it's to notify so other beekeepers know who to get a hold of if for some reason they're getting too close or whatever. And we've had issues with that in the past. So
Thanks, Jeff. Okay. We will open it to public comment again. Please state your name for the record. Limit your comment to 3 minutes. And we will open the floor. And I don't see anybody. Okay, Al, go ahead. I'm gonna mute myself.
Yeah, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, hey, but the first question was, so I get it for application of pesticides, and then it's also, what exactly by hive management issues did you mean? Can that be explained a little bit further? And I'll hold my time, or do I have to speak for the whole 3 minutes?
No, that's fine. I mean, we want this to be engaging where we can make it manageable. So I'll just speak on my knowledge. Jeff by far is the expert. So, you know, if somebody isn't managing their hives, if they've, a lot of times it's abandonment. So if they have disease issues, issues that could pose, you know, a risk to other species is what we're, other bees, so forth is what we're mostly concerned about. But Jeff, I'll let you expand on that. You're the entomologist.
well, I think you did pretty good. As far as hive management goes, it's one, if we get a complaint about the bees and problems with bees, that doesn't happen very often in the north so much as it happens down south. That somebody will be concerned with down there the aggressiveness of the colonies and stuff. But it's also a matter of, you know, if it is somebody complains that the bees, and we had a situation where another beekeeper complained about somebody else's bees that seemed to be abandoned, then we can go in and find out whose they are. Otherwise, it gets to be a pretty involved process. We've also had the case where people have called us up and all of a sudden bee colonies have appeared on their property and they don't know who to contact and to find out what's going on. And we've dealt with that a number of times. It probably happens a couple times every year that somebody says, well, these are all of a sudden appeared on my ditch bank or something, you know. So that's kind of the management side of it. I mean, that's from our standpoint, we regulate abandoned colonies, and if we can't find who the owners are and there's complaints about the colonies and they appear to be in poor health, then we have the ability under our regulations to have the colony destroyed. We haven't done that for a long, long time, but it is there. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does. So you're just saying generally about public safety. But I did have one question. How much by management of a hive do you mean? Can you just, for someone from the state, just go in and start looking at the beehives if you have them on property, or what's going to be the procedure on that?
Well, I mean, we would never just go in and look at colonies without having permission. In fact, in our survey, our bee health survey that we do, we always have the beekeeper there with us. This would only be a case again if it was a matter of the colonies basically were either extremely weak or dead, and then we were trying to find out how to get rid of them so they don't impact the other beekeepers in the area. But I mean, we would go through every possible means we could. I mean, obviously the landowner, if it's not the person, and I think basically if you're putting a colony on somebody's property, they need to know about it, obviously. And hopefully they would be able to tell us, oh, this is so-and-so's bees, okay? We do have bee colonies that have popped up in kind of some weird places that land management people have called us up and said, hey, I got a bunch of colonies. What's going on? And again, we'll do everything we can do, including contacting other beekeepers in the area to figure out who might have the colonies. A long time ago, if you go back when I first started in the department, it was actually a requirement to brand the colonies, and during the apiary registration process, you registered your brand just like with cattle. Okay. And this is an effort to get back a little bit to that so that we can, kind of determine if we need to, whose colony it is. And then if you don't label the colony, and we can't find out who it is, I mean, we don't have much choice if there's a complaint about it. Okay.
And I'll just expand on one thing that Jeff said. So we do not have the capacity to be going out and hunting every single hive. So that's not the intention of this. It's mainly if we have a complaint, we can go out, and if it's not the landowners, we can actually do something about it. We can follow up with the owner, we can educate the owner, or if it's just complete abandonment, mismanagement, that's very clear, we can do something. And same thing, if the landowner has no idea those things are being placed on their property, we can work in that capacity too. But it's certainly not a means for us to be going out and trying to inspect every single hive in the state.
We're not. This is only going to be on a, for lack of a better thing, a complaint type basis.
So then if you take them, that'll also apply then if you take them like in the middle of Nevada somewhere in an alfalfa field and you already have permission with the landowner, you still want them, marked in a way that the owner of the hives can be tracked
this
down.
would, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley, it applies to any colonies that are not on the person's, at least that's originally the way we wrote it, that are not on your property. Even if you put it on your neighbor's property, technically by the regulation, you would have to have it, posted. And even if it's out in the middle of the Nevada and there's alfalfa fields and you put your colonies out, all of a sudden they decide to treat, or the crop advisor, if you want to call them that, or pest control person goes there to do anything, they at least then right away have a way to notify you or to get a hold of you so that you can, and you're not leaving it up to that, well, the owner may tell you, may not tell you, just makes it a lot easier. Okay. And hopefully protects your bees.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, so is it, so when you talk about a hive colony, is that on every box, or at least as long as one of the boxes is stenciled with some type of communication information?
Just some sort of placard or something stenciled on a box that would be clearly visible to anybody driving up to the apiary. And it's just for the apiary. You don't have to do every single box.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I apologize, that was me misspeaking. So thank you for clarifying that, Jeff.
What did okay.
You did good. I kept saying, yeah, I wasn't using just the term apiary, so my apologies.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Lindsay, oh, sorry, Al, were you finished with your comment? I think you were.
Yeah, do I need to lower my hand or?
No, you're good. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
No, it was good. I get the intent. So it's just basically for kind of public safety for everyone involved, from the beekeeper to those around.
Yeah, it might be a good thing for you too if you have your name and everything on there and somebody sees it, they know maybe who to contact for some honey or something like that, or may want you to put colonies on their property. So in a sense, it's a little bit of advertising for you guys.
All right, Lindsay, thanks for your patience. I will open the floor to you.
Sure. I guess mine was more of a clarifying question as well. It's just in regard to, you mentioned this is happening more in the south than the northern area. At what rate is this a problem? Is it truly a problem? Is it just an isolated incident? Because working with livestock producers, I know that people like to tattletale a lot when there's not really a problem. It's just you know, so I didn't know if this was the same trickle effect that we're seeing in this type of environment. Because I see it a lot in other livestock species, if you will.
I'll start, but I'll let Jeff jump in there. So I'll say the fact that we do, I don't know the number of complaints that we've gotten, but we're getting enough that when we have property owners saying things are being put on their property and they have no idea and they're not really thrilled about it, when we're going out and responding to a complaint and we can't follow up with anybody on the education or need for a diseased or abandoned hive, you know, that in itself is not allowing us to do what we've been commissioned to do, to make contact, to respond. And so that's, you know, the whole intent. But Jeff, on in terms of the level of complaints or issues, I'll leave that to your.
Well, on northern Nevada, we probably see this, you know, maybe once a month during the main part of the year, you know, from April on to September. I would think I get maybe a call a month. In southern Nevada, it's a call or two a week that we get on bee issues. And a lot of times, one big one last year was somebody put colonies on the guy allowed somebody to put colonies on his property, but he had no contact information for the guy. And we were trying to trace it down because it was a stinging incident with Africanized honeybees. So that's kind of what I guess I'm getting at is those kind of issues. You know, does it occur a lot? It's not like it occurs every day, but it does occur once or twice a month. And these things, the whole thing is when we get down to the point where, you know, if you guys can help us make it easier to contact people, then we don't go through all the hoops of trying to figure out who it is. And I remember one about a year ago or a year and a half ago, I spent hours trying to figure out who the colonies belonged to and why they were there, and eventually it worked out. They had been somebody that the person actually knew, but it would be it would make it a lot easier. And this will apply, you know, this doesn't apply just to the in-state folks, it'll apply to the out-of-state folks too. So
and that was going to be my next question. How does this apply to the beekeepers on their way to or from California for the migratory effects that stop here and drop off pallets of hives?
well, if they drop off pallets of hives and they're going to be there at all, I guess maybe that's something we need to clarify. But as soon as they're going to be left there for any length of time more than overnight, which I don't know why anybody would do that, but then they would be subject to this regulation also. But most of them are going to be if they're coming from California, they're going to have all the registration stuff from California. And we have traced them down in the past that way because they've had their California registration markings on it. And I think they have to brand. I'm not sure somebody can speak up to it, but used to be they had to brand every colony, not just a notification in the apiary, but every colony had to have a brand on it.
Lindsay, does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
All right, I have Adele Barber, so I will mute my microphone and you are good to speak.
We can't hear you, unfortunately.
How about now?
Now you're on.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dale Barber. I'm a master beekeeper, and I represent the Great Basin Beekeepers of Northern Nevada and also Bee City, USA number 76 out of Carson City. We have about 130 members in these two organizations, and we try to encourage our beekeepers, if they're invited to place hives on a property, to have a hive host agreement with that property owner. That way, the property owner knows who we are and who to contact. And if there's any issues, they usually contact us. But that also helps us take care of the problem. If there's any spraying to be done, they can contact us and we can protect our hives. And we also do that with the mosquito abatement people in our area so that they can contact us and we can cover our hives and protect them during that spraying. So that's how we're doing it as a club or clubs here in this northern part of the state in our area. And I'm thinking that maybe more local education with bee clubs and so forth. There's only about 6 bee clubs, I think, in the state. 4 of them are here in Northern Nevada. We have 2 Vets for Bees organizations, one in the Reno area and one in Las Vegas area. And we want to try to make sure that they're well educated and well prepared to deal with these kind of problems. And I think the local education is going to be really critical with beekeeping and bee management throughout the state. We don't have that many beekeepers in the state, so if the more education we can get involved, the better off I think we're going to be, and we'll have fewer problems if we can get that local education going. And I would like to suggest that we'd be tickled to death on our organization, particularly in myself, that if there's any way we can assist you at the state level in helping organize more bee clubs throughout the state, we'd be glad to do that and make this a little bit better and much easier for the people to manage the bees, because we're losing about 40% a year nationwide. We lose more sometimes here, but nationwide it's about 40%. And the big problem, of course, we've got about 20 viruses that we're dealing with in this management thing. So we want to make sure we're not letting that spread throughout the state and throughout other colonies in our area. So we try to get this management down to something we can control. Thank you.
For the record, Ashley Jepson. Thank you, Del. Those are some, first of all, it's really great to hear what you guys are encouraging for the coordination with the landowners. That's a great practice. I completely agree. And I think definitely helps move our goals along too. So thank you and kudos to your group. And I would absolutely agree, education is key. And I know Jeff is very involved and just speaking, particularly in speaking about viruses and so forth in ways that we can work to address some of those challenges. So I will make sure that we have your contact information as some of those efforts move forward. I know the department's has some goals to do some large scale conferences that cater to a wide group of ag industry. So I think potentially that might be a good fit too on top of some of our individualized training. So I appreciate that, and we'll definitely keep that in mind moving forward.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, make sure I'm not missing any hands. Kelly, I'm going to move on to you. Kelly Clark.
Good morning. I just have a couple of questions. I'm a hobbyist beekeeper, and one of the things that I'm wondering about this overall, and maybe I missed it, but is there a regulation in Nevada revised statutes right now that says pesticides would not be applied if a hive is marked?
For the record, Ashley Jepson, it has been, and I'll let Jeff speak on this too, but it's been, well, Jeff, I'm drawing a blank. Didn't something enter into NAC or NRS on the notifications?
Jeff Knight, for the record, what is in the NAC's on pesticides is basically the way it works is that the beekeepers are supposed to notify the pest control companies that they have hives there. And once that notification is done, then it's up to the pest control company to notify the beekeeper within 24 to 48 hours if any applications are going to be made, or I think it's 48 hours, within 48 hours. And therefore, that would allow the beekeeper to move or protect the colony. Now, this sort of applies mainly to agricultural type areas. I mean, and this is back to, working with your neighbors. If you're a small beekeeper and you just have some colonies in the backyard, it goes a long way to being friends with the people. And if they all of a sudden have a pest control company coming in and spraying their trees or something, they can let you know, then at least you can protect your colonies and do the best you can to keep them protected. But as far as, and that's, I don't know, is that answering your question? I mean, that's the regulations we have in regards to pesticides and bees.
So Jeff, and there is the option, folks can notify us where their locations are, and we do have this information mapped, so pest control companies are supposed to be checking that.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm sorry.
Is that currently happening? Because I mean, my question is, what I'm trying to identify what any benefits might be of this identification. And if it was something that the Department of Ag was taking this registration information and providing it to pesticide companies and simplifying for beekeepers so that we don't have to contact, our local pest control companies and all of our neighbors, then I would see a benefit of this. And what I heard was that was a benefit, but if there's nothing specifically in NRS that says pesticide companies cannot apply pesticides where a signed and marked hive is located, then I don't see that there's anything that's enforceable there.
So Jeff, speak on, I mean, the pest control companies are supposed to be checking that site. So we could be taking, if a site was located and they notified us and it was listed on that site and it was sprayed, there would be potential action there. Am I over speaking, Jeff?
Well,
Isn't that the intent?
If you look at we've got two separate things we're talking about.
We do. Yep.
We're talking about one, our voluntary registration site under our pollinator that was created under our pollinator protection plan. That is voluntary both from the beekeeper standpoint and from the pest control standpoint. Okay. They don't have to look at it, but they can. We're going through some issues with that right now that we're trying to kind of figure some things out. But it is there, but it's totally voluntary. What I was speaking to was the fact that if somebody's going to apply pesticides, or if you're worried about somebody applying pesticides in and around your colonies, then it's going to be up to you to try and notify. The way the law reads, it's up to you to notify the pest control companies in the area. I know, like mosquito abatement, you can notify them, and they reach out as best they can to people in the area too, before they do applications. But I mean, if you're talking about you've got colonies over in one, and on your property, and your neighbor's going to spray, we have no. Now, if somebody comes and intentionally sprays your colonies, yeah, there's regulations against that, and that would be turned over. We would do an investigation, and that's turned over as a misuse of pesticides. Okay, but if your neighbor decides to spray his fruit trees while they're in full bloom, and all your bees are over there, visiting the fruit tree, then there may be something on the label that he uses that you might be able to eventually go after that way. But just no applications around a bee colony. We don't have any regulations on that, and that would be absolutely I don't know how you'd ever enforce that. I mean, that would be up.
Yeah, that was my point. I'm not, as I'm reading over what the NAC 552 says, I think the second paragraph where it says this notification also would assist in the protection of the bees from pesticide use on the adjacent lands. I think that should be stricken, because it won't. This notification is not going to assist in protecting bees from pesticide use on the adjacent lands, because there's nothing that is enforceable in that regard. I mean, if we're talking voluntary, that's good. And I do talk to my neighbors about everything I do. And I really believe in a good neighbor policy. But when we're looking at NAC, which is the way that the NRS will be applied, I don't see anything currently that says because your hive is identified, you're going to be protected from pesticide use on adjacent lands.
Well, no, and that's.
So
I mean, what we're hoping is that. I'm sorry, Ashley.
I just want to mention to what she was saying. What you're reading is that background that was an error. Stuff has been stricken from the proposed NAC. So what you're reading will be already stricken. That's what I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. That background that you're looking at had to do with information that's since been stricken. So
is the only part of the rule that's changed is the apiary identification that you showed on when we first opened?
That's right, just the sign. So with what Jeff was saying, this is really it's another measure to help us do our jobs when there's complaints of, that are posing disease risk, hive abandonment, placing them on properties where the property owner doesn't want them. And also it's another measure that will help a neighbor or a pest control company identify that there's hives there and take action. It's just another measure to help streamline that. Is it all-encompassing? No.
Okay, so then my only other question, and I won't take up too much more time. How, if a hive is abandoned and unmarked, that's still going to be the same problem for you guys. How will this NAC change how you address those issues? Will you then be able to ask the permission of the property owner and then go on and remove the abandoned hive? I'm just wondering how, what the changes will be as a result of this NAC.
So for the record, Ashley Jepson, and then Jeff, I'll let you speak to it. But how the code is written now is, yes, we would have to dispose of the hive. Whereas if we're able to make, if somebody willingly is not labeling and that's what's happening, that's the recourse. Whereas if somebody doesn't want that to happen, and maybe it's an education issue, having the label is going to allow us to or the signage is going to allow us to follow up with the person and provide that education and provide that next step. So it's giving us more so that there can be a decision on both sides versus just removal and disposal. And Jeff, if I misspoke, feel free, but go ahead, and I'm sure you want to expand on that.
Yeah, Jeff Knight. I don't know that it's going to change it that much in that sort of situation. I mean, we're still going to have to go out and do our due diligence of trying to track down the owner, trying to find out what's going on. If it's a healthy colony, we'll do our best to figure out how, get it under management, I guess. I don't know. It's going to be, like I said, those kind of things we deal with very rarely, but they do come up where these people have dropped colonies and nobody's seen them for 6 months. And so, if we can't get a hold of them, I'm trying to remember how it reads in the NAC, but it's basically if the colony's determined to be abandoned, then we have that ability to deal with it. I won't necessarily say destroy it all the time, that there may be other options, but but in the case of a colony that has a few bees in it coming in and out, or no bees in it, and that's a lot of times the case up north here, is there's just a box out there that's been sitting there, and so that becomes an abandoned colony. Okay.
All right, thank you.
For the record, Ashley Jepson, I do see a question in the chat from Stephen. Is this going to require registration of hives? Contact information is good, but a name and phone number is good enough? Question mark. What research are you using to determine pollinator impacts? So, and we will show the screen again with the draft language. It would not require registration. This is really just allowing us to respond accordingly when the complaints are issued. At this point in time, the regulation is written to include the owner's name, home or business address, and contact information, meaning telephone or email. We're open to discussion on that, whether maybe it is name and phone number or email, as long as people are actually giving the correct information. That's why we'd had address, is usually it's a little bit more foolproof, but we understand on some of the hesitation there too. But to your question, no, it does not require a registration. It just requires signage by the apiary. And what research are you using to determine pollinator impacts? I'll leave that to Jeff on that piece of the question.
Can you clarify that? Because this doesn't, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by pollinator impact. We don't do anything to measure this has nothing to do with pollinator impact. And we have no ways of monitoring pollinator impact. Is that what you're asking?
So I think we'll wait and let him, I don't know if he doesn't have a microphone, so let's give him a second to type something. There's another question, Lindsay, from Lindsay Ashley in the chat as well.
I just saw that. Thanks, Megan. If a colony has been determined to be abandoned, is there a process of notification for area beekeepers that may want to adopt said bees? No, there is not a process for adoption. And a lot of times, if with abandonment comes some other issues. So oftentimes, and again, I'm not the expert, I'll leave it to Jeff. There may be concerns with those bees being mixed with other colonies or whatever it may be, but I'll leave that to Jeff. But to your question, no, there is not a process for others to adopt those bees. Jeff, did you want to expand on?
Well, I
what
would
concerns would
say
be?
that, you know, under our Jeff, not, I always forget that. For the record, Jeff Knight, no, there isn't a process for adopting, but if it was a strong, healthy colony, you know, and we determined, we went in and determined that there wasn't a lot of disease and maybe there were people around. You know, that's something I'd almost say, yeah, I'd rather do that than destroy the colony. But and again, it's like Ashley said, it may be a really and most of these colonies that we say are abandoned, I don't think anybody would ever want anywhere near near their apiaries or in their apiaries, simply because I mean, these are usually really heavily diseased and very, very weak colonies. And I don't doubt if they've been abandoned, the varroa mite numbers would probably be through the roof. So, you know, if it looked like it was a fairly healthy new colony and we went in and did our sampling, maybe there'd be something we could do. I wouldn't rule it out, I guess.
Ashley Jepson. We'll move on to Charlie Nash.
And then Ashley, Stephen wrote in the chat. So Jeff, if you want to read that while Charlie's he gave some description there.
Hi there, Charlie Nash, Washoe Valley, Nevada. I just had a quick question. Not so much as far as pesticide use, but herbicide sprayed by Department of Transportation on bar ditches. Are there any regulations or notifications that they should be giving us, as you know, with apiaries before they spray?
For the record, Ashley Jepson, I think for, you know, some of our sister agencies, we've been leaning on that notification list. That was one of our efforts to try to streamline that communication. Jeff, I don't know if you know offhand if they've been referencing it, but it's certainly something that we could reach back out to encourage them to. But I'll also mention it's important then that the beekeepers that would impact are doing the registration, because I'll say there hasn't been a substantial amount of participation on that. But Jeff, I'll leave it to you.
I'm trying to process two questions at once here, but as far as again, Jeff Knight, as far as other agencies spraying and everything, I mean, the only agency I know that does any other than mosquito abatement, and the mosquito abatement group that I am part of, we're always talking about notifying beekeepers and everything and finding out where they're at. And if you're in an area that you do mosquito abatement, then that has mosquito abatement, then you need to, it goes back to that regulation. You need to tell them first that, hey, I'm a beekeeper in the area. Let me know that you're going to when you're going to spray in the area. And they'll do that. They're very good about that. And they put you, I think Washoe County has a hot list or something, right, Ashley? They have some way of mass notifying folks. As far as agencies say like NDOT, they're spraying weeds alongside their road. Yeah, they may, if you're putting your hives up close to a road, that would be directly impacted by spraying. I would think you would want to make sure you notify NDOT You know, again, they under the regulation, they would be considered the applicator, and you need to notify the applicator. And then the applicator would need to notify you. And if there's an issue, we would have to take care of it. But is that kind of what you're asking about? I mean, I don't know of any other agency that does any other, like I said, mosquito abatement and NDOT are the only two that I know do any kind of pesticide applications.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
not so much the pesticide. It's the spraying of the bar ditches. So we have to carry off the Franktown Road, and they spray the bar ditches, which is the NDOT right of way along Franktown Road. You know, but there's a lot of stuff that grows there. You know, thistle, stuff like that. So I know they're spraying for weeds, but our apiary is only about 300 yards from there. So I know that the bees are foraging from those, from those weeds, and I'm just concerned if we contact them, same thing as far as pesticides. If your neighbor's going to spray, you need to contact the company that's going to spray. I'm just wondering if that's our duty to contact NDOT beforehand, and if we also have the right to put up like no spray zones, signs indicating that this area should not be sprayed.
Jeff Knight, I can't speak to the no spray zones. That would have to be something that would go through some kind of a ordinance, I guess. Actually, I'm not sure.
So
I
I
mean,
think
it's NDOT's probably mostly spraying. I mean, they're spraying for fire control and they're spraying for noxious weeds. So, but if you contacted them, then it would be up to them to somehow put it in their loop that they would have to contact you 48 hours in advance, and then you would have to protect or move your colonies.
Right. Yeah. Like last year, I saw a big truck and tanker spraying the bar ditches on Franktown Road, and I called NDOT, and I had to jump through 6 different people to figure out what exactly they're spraying. And it turns out it was called Rodeo, which is a sister of Roundup. And so, I mean, we were just trying to figure out exactly what they're spraying, but there's no notification or anything like that. And I believe that's because it's their right of way. But I'm wondering how that works with adjacent properties. If we have an apiary that's registered, if they have to, communicate with us before they spray that stuff.
So for the record, Ashley Jepson, I think there are some things that we could do along those lines. We do have a noxious weeds position that's actually funded through NDOT. So I think that we could communicate this concern and encourage them to reference that list that we have for those pre-spray notifications. And to be completely honest, I think signs are always helpful. Can you guarantee that they're going to abide by it? No, there's nothing that requires that as of right now, but having the person know it's in no spray zone and there's concerns and have your contact information there would likely encourage some form of communication. And I think that we could help on our end to just let folks know we did have this concern expressed during a public meeting with NDOT and see, if they'd be open to referencing that list to try to help allow for some planning on the beekeepers' end.
Yeah, I don't. I sympathize with you. I live in town, but I always have a lot of milkweed and alfalfa growing along my fence line. And apparently either the city didn't like it or somebody didn't like it, and they came by and sprayed it all. And I have it there for all the pollinators, but and I searched and searched and searched to try and find out who sprayed it, and nobody would fess up to it. So it's a tough situation, but all I can say is work with NDOT and work with us, and maybe we can put something up that we can do. They can maybe relate to spot spraying or reduce spraying or something along those lines. Well, I mean, I think it's workable if everybody talks. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
But
Ashley Jepson, thanks for your comment here. Jeff, let's see, did you get a chance to read Stefan's? I think you'd mentioned pollinators in the beginning, which I think a lot of that had to do with encouraging spray notifications when things are labeled so that it facilitates some of that communication. So I think that's where Stephen's comment was coming from. So in the beginning of the proposal process, the reasoning for the rule change was to protect wild pollinators, which is great, but you need to research to prove there is a problem to wild pollinators. So I think it was just, and Jeff jump in, but I think what Jeff was saying was it encourages that communication. It allows somebody that's applying pesticides or if they're coordinating with their neighbor to know they have bees there. So it's helping to mitigate some of the impacts to other pollinators as well.
Yeah, Jeff Knight, and it's not just, I don't know, the regulation we're discussing today is simply, it has nothing to do with wild pollinators. It's simply for beekeeping, for the pollinate, and the pollinator protection plan is for managed pollinators. Now, under that, things like alfalfa leaf cutters would fall and things like that, but has nothing to do with wild pollinators. You know, that's, I think there's research out there to prove that there's problems to the wild pollinators with pesticides too. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know it's been looked at. So, rule change, yeah. This rule change is this rule is totally only for labeling apiaries. I mean, if you decided, I would probably, if somebody was going to put out a alfalfa leaf cutter domicile or something along those lines, then yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt to to put a label on those too. But anyway, so okay.
The record, Ashley
What-
Jepson. Thanks for your questions and for your follow-up, Jeff. Kelly, I saw your comment pertaining to the NRS on the seizing and destroying of abandoned hives. That's the one I was referencing. So we want to avoid that where we can. We'd rather notify and communicate with the owner before we have to go to that route. So that's one of the intent there too. But in those situations that Jeff mentioned will potentially still be the case. Okay, any other folks for public comment? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I'm gonna go ahead. I know you saw and I'm sorry I didn't keep up that slide. I was having some technical issues and going back and calling on people and seeing the screen. So something I'll work on to improve. But I'm gonna share my screen again with that NAC. So folks can take a look at it again. And again, my apologies that the background justification hadn't been updated since we revised the NAC fairly significantly and struck things from the small business impact assessment phase. So again, my apologies, and give me just a moment to share that screen again. Can you see the PowerPoint? Okay, great. Okay, so this outlines it for you. Great. Just a second. Screen black. Okay, so as it reads, each apiary location shall be identified by a sign showing the owner's name, home or business address, and contact information, meaning telephone or email, unless the apiary is located on property owned by the beekeeper. So like we referenced, that's really what we're trying to tackle. So we did try to set some expectations on what that signage should look like. The identifying information shall be at least 1 inch in height, easily readable, and displayed in a conspicuous location in the apiary, or a similar identification conspicuously displayed on 1 or more hive bodies within the apiary. Any apiary not so identified shall be considered abandoned and subject to seizure action provided for in. And that actually needs to list the NRS specifically, but we will have that revised as it goes to LCB. So that's the language. We did receive some comment on concerns in listing home and business address. The reason we had that there was if somebody changes, it's easier to, there's multiple ways to get a hold of somebody. And in our enforcement capacity, a lot of times emails, phone numbers change. Address tends to be more of a fail-safe. So that's why we had that there. I think that we're open to discussion in maybe limiting that. So at least we can just get a hold of somebody in some capacity. So we're open to discussion on that, or if there are other ideas on the language. That's what we have, and we will open it back up if there are any additional public comments. Oh, Jeff, go ahead.
Jeff Knight, for the record. You know, Ashley, one of the things I just thought of is most of these folks are probably going to be have producer certificates, and maybe that can be or the producer certificate number. It still would be nice to have a phone number and everything, but that would be another way of us having the information that we need to get a hold of somebody through through our system. So,
and I think that would be an easy addition, or yeah. Those that are selling honey are required to be registered under our producer certificate system. So if they were registered, we would have their contact information, so they could potentially just, as Jeff was saying, list that registration number, and then it would minimize some of the additional information that's there, and would allow us to just check that database and contact them that way. I think that's a great suggestion for those that it would apply to. All right, I'm going to stop sharing here. Okay. I'm going to open it back up to public comment. And I do have one thing in the chat. Al, thanks for keeping us informed in the public process. All your efforts are greatly appreciated, and thanks for all you do. Gotta go. Have a great day. Thanks, Al. We so appreciate your participation. Very, very helpful. And thanks to everybody so far that's provided some insights. It's throughout this process. It's very, very helpful. Okay, with that, I don't see, I'm going to just, if anybody has a hand they still want to raise, any follow-up questions, any further discussion. If you don't feel like doing it here, shoot me an email. I so appreciate that. Because we do hear you. We want this to fit for everybody and to meet those mutual goals. So that's what we're here for. If you think of something after, don't be shy. Jeff, is there anything else you wanted to add that I may have botched or to provide clarification on? Just want to make sure I'm giving you the opportunity as the program expert. Share anything else?
Jeff Knight, no, I think we covered it pretty much. So,
Megan Brown, for the record, I re-entered Ashley's email in the chat. So if people do want to copy and paste that to be able to send written comments later, that's her email address.
Thanks, Megan. For the record, Ashley Jepson, this also will be uploaded. I believe a YouTube link will be uploaded to that same Agri website for folks, and we will prepare written comment. Bear with us as we put that together for folks to reference. So we'll go back with our team and chat through maybe some tweaks such as Jeff recommended that might minimize some of the information that needs to be listed out there if they're registered at another capacity with the department. That would certainly hit the mark on our end. But again, I know that's limited to just those selling honey, and that certainly isn't all inclusive, but certainly might help along the way. I don't see any other hands raised. With that, we will close the workshop at 11:06 on February 16th, 2022. And again, if you have any other comments or questions, please send me an email. We'll make sure that's folded into the public comment piece of our meeting minutes. We so appreciate your time and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.